The easiest way to explain how to use the community edition is to make a video. So basically when you power this thing on, as long as your ECU is powered, you're going to start getting some data. Each one of these layouts may or may not have a warning light. So that's what these little that's what these little dots are on the screen. They're warning lights, and this dot up the top is basically a shift light, but it also serves as a way to get to the configuration screen or setting screen. So if you press that, you'll get to this page. And if you want to somehow get out of this page, you can either go to any one of these tabs and hit cancel, or if you're at the home page, just press on the logo and it takes you back to whatever layout you've selected. So one of the first things I'd suggest you do is go to the warning lights page, and by default it's going to have values like this in there, and I think I've hard coded them to something similar to this. So what I would do is I'd come in here and suggest changing it to something that's relevant to your configuration. For example, if you want the shift light to come on at 6500, well then that's where you set the shift light here at 6500, hit the check mark, and it'll save that value. Well, it'll put the value on the screen here. In order for it to save it to the ESP32, you have to hit the save button. And the same thing goes for the rest of them. Some of these are kind of a little iffy. Like for example, AFR, it's there's a perfect AFR for your vehicle if you're boosted, right? So if your AFR is at 14 or above and you're basically getting on it, then you're basically running too lean, and that's bad, right? And then they have too much fuel being dumped in your engine. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to measure something like that to warn you about it. And for my setup, I basically said, look, I don't think I'm ever going to run lean. I have a pretty good tuner, and I have a good tune in my car, so I just want to know if it's ever too fat, too rich. So I basically will set this to something other than 14.5. This is a default value. Fuel pressure, I just want to know if my fuel pressure is below a specific number. Since I'm fuel injected, there's a specific number I should be at, and it's going to go up based on boost. Boost itself is basically overboost, and I think my car is set up for 25, so it's hard coded. I put 26. You can put it whatever you want. Coolant, I don't think my car ever gets to 202. I think it runs somewhere around 195, 197 down here in Texas. Oil PSI, whatever number I want to put there, or whatever you want to. Battery 11.9, because I'm supposed to be at 12 volts. Otherwise, my fuel injection system starts acting weird. And I think that's pretty much for everybody, right? So you can put it whatever number you want. An odometer, this isn't implemented just yet, but it will be. And what this is basically just like what it says. It's an odometer. That way you know how many miles you've driven and all that stuff. And speed is selectable. If you have a GPS and you don't have a vehicle speed sensor wired in and sending data to the ECU, then what you want to do is come over here and select GPS. Then all of a sudden GPS text will pop up. And if you're wondering what that is, I'll show you. And what that is there's two bits of info that are going to pop up on screen. Down here, what it should do is this. It should show you two small bits of info. And what that is it'll give you, I believe, the GPS speed, mile per hour. And interestingly enough, it's actually not showing up. It's supposed to on this one. Oh, did I not save it? Yes, save. Well, I guess I found a bug already. Oh no, there it is. Okay, so I didn't save it. So this will basically tell you how many satellites it's found and the speed in a text-based format. So if you're showing like 80 miles an hour here on the dial, well down here it'll say 80. So it's just like a little nerdy thing, I guess. So you know if you're really connecting to satellites out there, if you're experiencing some weirdness that you're not seeing anything happening in your gauge, then that's what you can do. Now back to the warning lights page. If for some reason, I don't know, let's just say you want to erase all of your settings and completely start all over, then you're going to hit erase up here, and it's going to do a little thing going on up here, and it's going to basically overwrite your settings and restart. And what it'll do is it'll give you the default settings I was talking to you about earlier. So So these are the hard-coded settings. It resets everything back to factory. Now, for future updates, you're going to want to use the OTA update feature. And there on my website, I gave you another way to do it by basically hooking up your ESP32 direct to your laptop. But that's going to be kind of inconvenient, right? Once everything's in your car, you're not going to want to be yanking it out, this and that. So that's what you do here. You select OTA update, and what happens is it turns on a web browser feature on the ESP32, and you can access it directly. And the instructions for that are on the website itself. So, and then you turn it off. Let's see here. ECU, basically the default value is Megasquirt, since that's what I'm running. And of course, if you have Speeduino Serial or Speeduino CANBus, you can select either one of those two. One small note about Serial. So the Speeduino Serial, if it's running on a Mega, it has a problem keeping up with sending the volume of data via serial to the ESP32. I mean, it's on a Mega. It's slow. So that's kind of a given. I don't know if it acts up all the time or in very high RPM situations. I'm not really too sure. But one of the things is I already have another way to pull data from Speeduino Serial, and that's basically using the R mode. Currently I'm using N, which is basically saying, hey, send me everything. So I've already done the code for the R mode, but I really haven't incorporated that into the community edition. But it will be happening over the next, I don't know, like a week or two or something like that. But I should be able to knock it out, and I'm very confident it works. Layouts, there's a total of 5 layouts in this thing. So if you've been following me, you'll know the layouts I have here. And if you hit this button on the side, it'll give you another layout. This is Paul's layout. I like it a lot. It's very, very simple, but it looks really good. Sorry, it's hard to do with one hand. Hit save. So, and if you notice, all of my other gauges have a sweep, but for this layout, I don't have the sweeps going on. So I just didn't implement it. But when it comes to the warning lights, what's going to happen is, for example, FPR, if it ever goes beyond whatever set in warning lights, this will light up. Same with IAT, coolant, and so on. So you'll have there's different ways. Even though it doesn't have the actual light itself, like the other layouts do, it basically has this text that lights up itself. It'll turn red. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the last thing I want to show you is the other tab. So one of the things I mentioned is I flipped around this layout. If you look at the screen, see how it's thicker up here than it is down here? That's because this display is actually upside down. And the reason is, on the Pro Edition, it has actual physical LED lights that are going to be up top of here. So the easiest way to implement something like this is to flip it around, because it basically puts the micro SD card reader here on the bottom, and it's very easy to install. But then after thinking about it in the community edition, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if people are going to like that. So I might flip it back around. If you guys don't like that, I can put it back to how it was, because it does not need to be upside down for the community edition. So if you do make your own case, it doesn't matter, because it's going to be thin on both top and bottom for the community edition. Now, if you don't care and you're good with it, this other page, what this is this basically shows JPEG images, JPEG, not JPG, and I don't know if that makes a difference, but the way the file is saved, it has to be saved specifically with some sort of it's basically DCT. I forget what it is, but I did it with an application called OrphanView. So I basically made the image a specific size, and of course had to flip it around because this layout is upside down. That way it shows up correctly. And if you're wondering, that's kind of weird. Well, that's the way Nextion is. I mean, if everything's upside down, you have to send everything to it upside down so it looks correct. I mean, and I can't encode flip the image, so it's kind of weird. So flipping this around did good and did bad. So I guess we'll find out. If you guys complain enough, you're like, nah, flip it back the way it was, then I'll do that, and it'll make it easier to where you don't have to flip these images. But in the big picture of things, once you get used to it, it's not really difficult. Each one of these selections here on the side, it basically selects a specific file, and I think vehicle is, I think car.jpg or something to that extent. Engine is ENG.jpg and so on. So whenever you hit that, it'll display the vehicle. If you hit engine, it'll show your engine, and so on and so forth. And everything is basically saved on the micro SD card. So each one of these pictures that represents text here, you put on your micro SD, you hit the button, it'll display it. Like induction, it'll display, your turbo, or let's just say you have a blower, or let's just say you're naturally aspirated, and the only thing you have is a carburetor. Well, that's okay. So you put that on there. Or actually, you won't be, never mind, I said carburetor. Oh, carburetor, that's funny. Let's just say you're just naturally aspirated. You just have basically a Holley high ram, and that's it. You don't have anything, no nitrous, no nothing. So you basically put a picture of that on there if you'd like. But it doesn't really matter. You can basically name the file, for example, eng.jpg. You can put a picture of anything. I mean, anything you want, and it'll show up here. So that's pretty much it. I figured it'd be easier just to make a video instead of putting a whole bunch of text.